welcome to CCK Live. Joining me today are Brad Hennings and Courtney Ross. Welcome. And today we're going to be talking about accessing VA disability benefits questionnaires. We're going to call those DBQs. We use a lot of acronyms here at CCK because VA uses a lot of acronyms. And we're also going to be talking about how VA is outsourcing their compensation and pension examinations. So compensation and pension examinations are crucial to veterans' disability claims, and disability questionnaires, or DBQs, have been a part of the compensation and pension examination process for a long time. And so we have some interesting information on both of these topics. So Courtney, I'm going to turn to you first and ask you, what are the DBQs used for in the VA disability claims process?
Thanks, Robert. So DBQs first are a downloadable form, and the format of them is like a checkbox style, and they are designed to mirror VA's rating criteria that they use when they are rating a veteran's condition that they've applied for benefits for. As you mentioned, they are used at compensation and pension examinations. So the examiner will often use the appropriate DBQ as they're examining the veteran. So for example, there's DBQs that are for very specific conditions, something like hypertension. There's others that are a bit more general, for example, service connection for, or a DBQ for heart conditions that an examiner will use if they're doing an assessment on any type of heart diagnosis. And they were really created to answer questions about the aspects of the disability that VA is going to be looking at. So symptoms of the condition, severity, possible causes, any link to other disability that the veteran might have and is already service connected for. They're also meant to, like I said, capture the information that VA is looking at in the rating criteria. So a lot of the same language from the rating criteria for the condition that's being assessed is actually included in the DBQ, which makes it easier for adjudicators when they're looking at the DBQ and the condition that's being claimed to do the assessment. It also helps doctors or examiners who are completing the DBQs quickly move through the information, and it provides some kind of standardized form so that all examiners who are completing these compensation and pension examinations for VA are using the same form for the same conditions.
Brad, I'd like to ask you, what are some of the benefits of DBQs for veterans?
So one of the great things about these publicly available DBQs are they allowed veterans to complete examinations with their own private healthcare providers outside of the VA. And this allows veterans to have more insight into the evaluation process, and they can see exactly what the examiners are looking for in relation to their specific disability. And also allows veterans a form to seek a private medical opinion, perhaps from their own doctor or a specialist who's already familiar with their medical history and knows the course of their disability. And finally, there's an increased efficiency because the veteran's disability via the DBQ, the Disability Benefits Questionnaire, was evaluated in relation to the rating schedule. And why that's important is because so often medical providers are focused on a treatment plan, on a treatment report. And the DBQs allow these private providers to provide all the information that's necessary for the VA raters to properly evaluate the veteran's disability.
And so, Brad, what I'm hearing is that these DBQs made it easier for, first, the examiners conducting these examinations, whether they're a private physician who has the forms to use or a VA doctor, and for the veterans themselves who are claiming to see, hey, what is the doctor actually looking at, and what questions are being answered. So transparency, this was a good thing from a transparency perspective. But recently we've learned that these DBQs that were once publicly available, starting really in COVID, they became unavailable. So VA has removed them from their website, which makes this process a little less transparent. And VA's reason for removing them from the public-facing website, these DBQs, that VA said it was updating the rating schedule and review process for public-facing documents, and that process takes too long. VA says that they're safeguarding against fraud, though this happens in every system, and the reported fraud has been minimum. And DBQs were being performed remotely. VA says they should be completed in person. So all of these excuses for VA, and this is my interpretation, for removing the public-facing DBQs ring hollow. First of all, there's very little fraud in the system, especially with respect to DBQs, because doctors, licensed doctors, are not going to commit fraud and lose their medical license in answering questions for a VA disability questionnaire. And second, there's no law that says the examination has to take place in person. You can do it virtually. In fact, VA examiners are using the DBQs virtually. They're not conducting examinations in person, and they're using the DBQs. So those reasons that VA gave ring hollow. What impact, Courtney, does this have on the claims process, the removal of these DBQs?
Yeah, so I think this relates directly back to what Brad was just saying about how when they were publicly facing, veterans could download the forms and provide them to their own private treating physicians who would be able to fill them out. Now that they're no longer publicly facing and veterans don't have direct access to them, it's not as easy for them to get the form to be able to provide it to their treating doctors who typically know their conditions and have seen them on a consistent basis. So given that, it makes it more challenging for veterans to gather evidence to submit in support of the conditions that they're claiming to VA. And this is a particularly important note because under AMA, the Appeals Modernization Act and the new appeals system, certain parts of the procedural process require additional evidence if you want to choose that procedural lane. Specifically, if you want to file a supplemental claim for a condition, you're required to submit new and relevant evidence. And so by removing the DBQs from the public, it makes it more challenging for veterans to gather that evidence and submit it in support of their claims.
And Brad, the other thing that's happening along with the removal of the DBQs and the examination process is VA is outsourcing all of the compensation pension examinations. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, Robert. So they're eliminating the in-house C&P exam program. They're outsourcing all of the exams. And what that means is that previously VA was outsourcing about 60% of exams, meaning VHA, Veterans Health Administration doctors, would be conducting about 40%. Historically, they conducted most of them, and VA has slowly moved into the world of outsourcing these over the last 10 or 15 years. So all of these new examinations are not going to be conducted by VA employees, by Veterans Health Administration employees. They will be conducted by independent, they will be conducted by private contractors on the outside. And so all the new instructions about the exams that we're doing now, it says a VA contract medical examiner will contact the veteran, conduct the examination, and issue the report to the VA. Now, this is significant because there's already a large backlog of C&P examinations due to COVID, where the examinations were not able to happen. There's a concern that there's a lack of medical professionals familiar with the kinds of veteran-specific issues and illnesses, disabilities such as Gulf War illness, PTSD. There's a number of things that are very specialized within the VA system, and there's a concern that there won't be enough knowledge as to these veteran-specific issues. And honestly, most importantly, VA has a history of lacking oversight for these contractors. The Government Accountability Office has reported that VA contract examiners haven't met quality or timeliness standards, and only about half of the exams met their own standards between 2017 and 2018, and that the department hasn't really had the tools to effectively manage this outsourcing program. Moreover, members of Congress say that VA still hasn't implemented the recommendations made by the GAO. And so this is all very concerning because these examinations are the linchpin of a veteran's disability claim typically. They're very important, and the veterans are already waiting a very, very long time throughout the VA claims and appeals process. So anything that will slow things down and that are not going to be timely or of good quality are a problem.
So Brad, you raise an interesting point. So first of all, VA is outsourcing all these examinations where historically they had been performed by VA doctors at VA medical centers who had the expertise and quite frankly, the experience of treating veterans over the years. They would be the ones answering these questions. Now they're going to outside doctors, not part of the VA system, probably paid a flat fee. We don't know the answer to that, but we're assuming it's not an hourly fee. They're paid a flat fee. So how much time and energy are they going to give and consideration? So if a veteran now wants to go to his or her private doctor, they don't have the public-facing DBQs to bring. So when we here at CCK learned about this, Courtney, we did something called a FOIA request. And would you share with our audience what a FOIA request means?
Yeah, so FOIA stands for Freedom of Information Act. It's a law that essentially allows anybody to request documents that are in the custody of a federal agency. So we submitted a request to VA for copies of all of the current DBQs that are being used. And we did receive a response from them with copies of those DBQs.
So this is important because when we learned at CCK that VA was no longer going to use these as public-facing documents, we used the Freedom of Information Act, as Courtney pointed out, and we requested copies of the DBQs that VA is using presently, and they released them to us. And we now are putting these DBQs on our website at cck-law.com, and there will be a link during the broadcast that you can use, or you can just search for DBQ on our website at cck-law.com. And you can use these DBQs and bring them to your private examiner to hopefully get the questions answered that need to be answered for your specific disability claim. Any final closing thoughts, Brad or Courtney?
The number one thing is that this is about transparency, and the more transparent that VA is, the better it is for veterans. And sometimes VA is more interested in doing that than others, and we're just doing our best to provide as much information to veterans and their dependents as we can as a firm.
And I'll just add that despite the fact that VA has taken the DBQs or made them no longer available to the public, nothing has changed about the ability of a veteran to submit a DBQ and have VA, or VA is still required to review it if a veteran does have one completed by their private physician. So nothing has changed about that. It's just more difficult to get the DBQ form from VA.
That's a really good point, because VA is going to have to just look at that evidence and consider that evidence in a claim. Very good points. Courtney, Brad, thank you for joining us today. This is Robert Chisholm signing off from cck-law.com. Please follow us on Facebook and other social media platforms, and thank you.